Hello and welcome to my channel. Okay, we're looking at fourth time lucky. The joys of doing a video and editing all 4 subs. I don't know. I think I'm disillusioned. I'm overtired and in need of bed. Anyway, join me on my dot to dots while I have a bit of a rant and a ramble. We are talking tonight about some radio facts. You may find some funny and you may find some educational. I have gone through this now 4 times. I could probably do it without the prompts. Alright, let's kick off. Alright, early developments in radio were called wireless telegraphy, which is why the radio used to be called a wireless. The word broadcasting refers to radio transmissions that were originally an agricultural term for the wide scattering of seeds. The existence of radio waves and the feasibility of radio transmission was predicted by James Clerk Maxwell in the 1860s. Marconi made the first successful transatlantic transmissions of radio waves in 1901 and 1902. In 1903, Marconi enabled US President Roosevelt to send a radio message to King Edward VII. Before Marconi, others, including Nikola Tesla, Oliver Lodge, and Heinrich Hertz, had good claims to have invented radio transmission. In 1922, the UK government introduced a radio licence costing 10 shillings or 50 pence. Officially, between 1922 and 1971, you could not listen to the radio in the UK without having a licence. Marconi won a Nobel Prize for contributions to the development of wireless telegraphy in 1909. Marconi was the great-grandson of John Jameson, founder of Jameson Irish Whiskey. Okay, I'm going to shake things up a bit because I need a bit of a break. So, some radio wave facts. Radio waves are electromagnetic waves, not sound waves as many people believe. Radio waves are considered to be one of humans' most important discoveries, as it made communication much more efficient. Then it would be time for my tea bag. A radio wave was created was created when a magnetic field and an electric field join. Radio waves travel very fast at the speed of light. If you turn on a radio, the radio receives the radio waves in the air and converts them into an electrical signal, which is converted to sound waves, and the radio amplifier then boosts the sound waves so you can hear the music. I never understood this. Interesting radio wave facts. It was Clerk Maxwell in the 1960s that first predicted that radio waves existed. His theory is called Maxwell's equations and described radio and light waves to be electromagnetism waves that were travelling through space. Heinrich Hertz demonstrated radio waves in his lab in 1887. A Hertz is a radio wave unit of measurement that is named after Heinrich Hertz. In the 1890s, Guglielmo Marconi created the first practical and usable radio transmitter and receiver. Radio waves were not the only type of electromagnetic wave. Other types include radar, Bluetooth, ultraviolet light waves, microwaves, X-rays, and infrared. A radio wave is broadcast in different frequencies, which can include FM radio waves that broadcast between 88 MHz and 108 MHz, and AM radio waves that broadcast between 550 kHz and 1600 kHz. Wi-Fi uses radio waves that are routed through a wireless internet router using radio waves at frequencies between 2.4 and 5.8 GHz. It's believed that radio waves will travel forever unless something absorbs the waves. If this is true, and there are other life forms in the other places in the universe, it's possible that radio waves from Earth have been heard on other planets, although they might not understand what it says. Radio waves will bounce off items if not absorbed. This means radio waves can bounce off the ground or a cloud by any electronic conductor object. A text message being sent from a cell phone to another cell phone is a radio wave. The radio wave leaves the sender's cell phone, is sent to a tower that sends a wave to the recipient of the text. These are all unique radio waves being sent, which means it's possible to reach the right person. A radio wave can be very short or very long. Wavelengths can reach 62 miles. In 1932, it was discovered that astrological objects emit radio waves, and a system has been developed to make it possible to create pictures from the radio waves. Excuse my alert. Astronomers use radio telescopes to study the radio waves being emitted from planets, dust, stars, gas clouds, comets, and other galaxies. And at astronomy observatories, they use diesel cars instead of gas-powered cars. Gas powers create sparks that interfere with the observations. Interesting fact. When a radio wave is received in a radio, the tuner is what makes it possible to pick up the specific radio station, because it makes it possible to listen to particular radio waves and tune out others. Okay, here's some other radio trivia. We've got the audio piece and the 1951 map of instructional radio stations across the country, but there's only so much ground they can cover. Okay. In 1932, Radio the Assistant Teacher Benjamin Darrow, who founded the Ohio School of the Air, wrote, "The central and dominant aim of education by radio is to bring the world to the classroom, to make universally available the services of the finest teachers and inspiration of the greatest leaders, and unfolding events through which the radio may become as vibrant and challenging textbook of the air." Stations name themselves after their educational mission. At WABE in Atlanta, the ABE stands for Atlanta Board of Education. The BE in WBEZ in Chicago stands for the Board of Education. Bonus points to anyone who knows what the Z stands for. Nope. Do we need to tell you that Cleveland's WBOE stood for? We might think that the ED in KQED stands for education. Turns out KQED comes from the Latin quod erat demonstratum, demonstradum, which was to be demonstrated. Check out an archival broadcast from WBOE around 040. There's an example of why there's nothing like live radio. The clip comes courtesy of... Okay. Worksheets come with many of the lessons, and this... Okay. Isn't the best of links. Alright, let's go back up. Alright. Guglielmo Marconi sends and receives the first radio wave in 1995. In Italy, by 1899, he sent a wireless signal across the English Channel, and in 1902 he received the letter S telegraphed from England to Newfoundland. This was the first successful transatlantic radio telegraphic message. Reginald Fassenden makes the first radio broadcast in 1906. He made the first radio broadcast in history. In 1907, Lee DeForest patented the electronic device named the Audion. DeForest's new invention boosted radio waves that were received and allowed the human voice, music, or any broadcast signal to be heard loud and clear. His work would also lead to the first AM radio and would allow transmitters to receive multiple radio stations. Ever wondered why United States radio and now television stations start with W and K? Beginning in 1912, every country approved of and received designated letters to begin radio station call letters with. This was to avoid confusion with other countries' radio stations. Think about how a domain name works today. In the United States, the letters W and K were selected for use. In 1923, the Federal Communications Commission ordained that all new radio stations east of the Mississippi River would use W as their first letter, and stations west of the Mississippi would use the K. At the time, the radio telegraph on the Titanic was one of the most powerful telegraph systems in the world. The radio telegraph was operated by the Marconi Company and was designed more for the convenience of the wealthy passengers than for the needs of the ship employees. During the sinking, the radio was used to reach nearby ships in order to rescue the passengers. The steamer ship Californian was closer to the wreck than the ship that would eventually reach her, the Carpathia, but the ship's wireless operator had already gone to bed. The Californian was unaware of the distress signals from the Titanic until the morning, but by then the Carpathia had already picked up all of the survivors. After the sinking in 1913, the International Convention for Safety of Life at Sea was organised. This produced sets of rules for ships, including having lifeboats for the entire manifest and in maintaining 24-hour radio use. One moment, please. Sophie, turn it down. Edwin Armstrong's work on frequency modulation... Turn it down! Thank you. Edwin Armstrong's work on frequency modulation, or FM, improved the audio signal of... Bad English. He controlled the audio signal by controlling the noise static caused by electrical equipment and the Earth's atmosphere. His life would take a tragic turn, as after years of fighting over FM patents with the RCA, he committed suicide in 1954. FM radio would become the predominant form for broadcasting music in the last half of the 20th century. On August 20, 1920, Detroit's 8MK, known as WWJ 950 AM, goes on air as America's first radio station, eventually offering the first news broadcast, sports play-by-play, and religious broadcast. A few months after 8MK's broadcast on November 6, 1920, Pittsburgh's KDKA made a commercial broadcast in the United States. The first program, the presidential election, returns in the race between Warren G. Harding and James Cox. The first car stereos were introduced in 1930s. Motorola offered one of the first car radios, which retailed for around $130. Philco also introduced the early head unit around that time. Adjusted for inflation, $130 is about $1,800 today, or a third of the price of the entire Model T. Satellite radio began in 1992 when the FCC allocated a spectrum for nationwide broadcasting of satellite-based digital audio radio service. Of 4 companies that applied for a license to broadcast, 2 of them, Sirius and XM, received approval to broadcast from the FCC in 1997. XM would launch in 2001 and Sirius in 2002, and the 2 would later merge to form Sirius XM Radio in 2008. Now, only 6 radio stations east of the Mississippi River can use K as the first letter of their call signs. Every other station uses W. Canadian radio stations begin with the letter C, while stations in Mexico begin with an X. There is an all-Christmas radio station. It's www.foreverchristmasradio.com. It's now in its 12th year of broadcast. Nikola Tesla was granted the first radio patents in 1900, resulting in Giglio Marconi's initial radio patents being denied that same year. 4 years later, the US Patent Office reversed its decision and awarded Marconi the patent for inventing radio, despite the fact that Marconi's devices used 17 of Tesla's patents. In 1943, the US Supreme Court upheld Tesla's original patents, but the history books had already recorded the name Marconi as the inventor of radio. Rush Limbaugh is nearly deaf. He had a cochlear implant around the turn of the century, which gives him some ability to hear. Howard Stern is a brown belt in Japanese Shokutan karate, and both of them share the same birthday. I don't know why they're relevant. 62% of shoppers are listening to the radio on average of 14 minutes prior to shopping. One 30-second TV commercial in the 2015 Super Bowl will cost $4.5 million. The same advertiser could fund a full 52-week national campaign on radio for that price. In 1920, the world's first commercial radio station, KDKA, went on air in Pittsburgh. FM radio made its first appearance in 1939. Officially, from 1922 to 1971, you could not listen to radio in the UK without a license. There are approximately 14,885 radio stations in America, which can be searched by zip code, call letters, and format on radio-locator.com if you care. Now, here's some technical jargon. Radio is a way to send electromagnetic signals over a long distance to deliver information from one place to another. A machine that sends radio signals is called a transmitter, while a machine that picks up the signals is called a receiver. The machine that does both is called a transceiver. When radio signals are sent out to many receivers at the same time, it is called a broadcast. Television also uses radio signals to send pictures and sound. Radio signals can start engines moving so that gates open on their own from a distance. Radio signals can be used to lock and unlock doors in a car from a distance. Sound can be sent by radio, sometimes through frequency modulation, FM, or amplitude modulation, AM. Many people work to make radio possible. After James Clerk Maxwell predicted them, Heinrich Rudolf Hertz in Germany first showed that radio waves exist. Guglielmo Marconi in Italy made radio into a practical tool of telegraphy, using mainly ships at sea. He is sometimes said to have invented radio. Later, inventors returned to transmit voices, which led to the broadcasting of news, music, and entertainment. Can you turn it down, Sophie? Radio was first created as a way to send telegraph messages between two people without wires, but soon two-way radio brought voice communication, including walkie-talkies and eventually mobile phones. Now in important use is to broadcast music, news and entertainers, including talk radio. Radio shows were used before there were TV programs. In the 1930s, the US president started sending a message about the country every week to the American people. Companies that make and send radio programming are called radio stations. They are sometimes run by governments and sometimes by private companies who make money by selling advertisements or advertisements. Other radio stations are supported by local communities. They're called community radio stations. In the early days, manufacturing companies would pay to broadcast complete stories on the radio, and they were often plays and dramas. Because the companies who made soap often paid for them, they were called soap operas. Radio waves are still used to send messages between people. Talking to someone with a radio is different than talk radio. Citizen band radio or amateur radio uses specific radios to talk back and forth. Police, firemen and other people who help in emergency use of radio communication systems to communicate, talk to each other. It's like a mobile phone, but also uses radio signals, but the distance to reach is shorter and both people must have the same kind of radio. The word radio is sometimes used to mean only voice band broadcasting, while most voice band broadcasting uses lower frequency and longer wavelength than most television broadcasting. Microwaves have even higher frequency, shorter wavelength, and they can also use to transmit television and radio programs and for other purposes. Communication satellites relay microwaves around the world. A radio receiver does not need to be directly in view of the transmitter. To receive program signals. Low frequency radio waves can bend around hills by diffraction, although repeater stations are often used to improve the quality of the signals. Shortwave radio frequencies are often reflected from an electrically charged layer of the atmosphere called the ionosphere. The waves can bounce between the ionosphere and the Earth can reach receivers that are not in line of sight because of the curvature of the Earth's surface. They can reach very far, sometimes around the world. Radio telescopes receive radio waves from the sky to study astronomical objects. Now there was a fun one. Where's it gone? Sorry. I've lost the tabs and the order I was doing them in. Where's it gone? It's the kids. Oh, here it is. Now, where did I get to? In order to transmit radio signals to submerged... Oh, I've read that already. Oh, I didn't go back a page. That's why. I'm thinking, I'm missing stuff. These were quite good. These were kids' facts. These were kickassfacts, actually, .com. Here we go. All right. The most powerful commercial radio station ever is WLW 700 kilohertz AM, which during certain times in the 1930s broadcasted 500 kilowatts radiated power. At night it covered half the globe. Neighbours within the vicinity of the transmitter heard the audio in their pots, pans and mattresses. A 13-year-old called out the Eastern State Penitentiary for having the wrong radio on display in a recreation of Al Capone's cell. The radio wasn't available until 1942, and Capone was imprisoned between 1929 and 1930, resulting in the museum replacing it and giving the teen the inaccurate radio. Back in the 1980s, people were able to download video games from a radio broadcast by recording the sounds onto a cassette tape that they would then play on their computers. In World War II, weather reports were censored to prevent enemy submarines from learning about conditions. A football game in Chicago was covered in fog so that the radio announcer couldn't see the field, but afterwards he was officially thanked for never using the word fog or mentioning the weather. In 2005, a radio polled 3,500 music fans to make the rock's ultimate supergroup, where they could choose the best musician of all time at each instrument. They ended up making Led Zeppelin. Most of the radio broadcasts that Robin Williams delivered in the movie Good Morning Vietnam were improvised by him. On the 28th of September 2006, the City Council of Reykjavik and neighbouring municipalities agreed to turn off all the city lights in the capital area for half an hour while a renowned astronomer talked about the stars and constellations on national radio. In 1978, a radio station accidentally played Imaginary Lover by the Atlanta Rhythm Section at the wrong RPM, causing it to sound just like Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks eventually heard about it and played the record at the increased speed for bandmates, who all believed it was her singing. See if you can get your hands on it. What is it, a 78 or a 33? And see if you can see the difference. The first time the Japanese people heard their emperor's voice on the radio was when he announced Japan's surrender in World War II. Rockstar allowed fans in 2007 to call a number to rant about what they thought was wrong with America. The best ones were featured on the radio station WKTT on GTA 4. The number one most played songs on US radio in the 2000s decade was How You Remind Me by Nickelback, for all you Nickelback knockers. It was played on the radio over 1.2 million times. See, it's popular. The 1946 Adventures of Superman radio show revealed the secret codes and rituals of the KKK, making it the laughingstock and drying up Klan recruitment almost overnight. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be scrapped after 20 years. It only survived because the military started using it as a radio tower, intercepting crucial military transmissions during World War I. The hysteria created by Orson Welles' War of the Worlds was a myth created by newspapers to instill fear over the power of broadcast radio. UVB-76 is a mysterious Russian radio station that has been transmitting continuously since 1982. Nobody knows who makes the signal, only that it's located near Moscow, makes a buzzing sound 25 times a minute, and every few years will broadcast a string of random names. And one of the checks which a British nuclear submarine makes to see whether the government is still functioning is whether BBC Radio 4 is broadcasting. When cowboy actor Slim Pickens from Blazing Saddles or Dr. Strangelove joined the military during World War II, he stated his profession was rodeo. The recruiter heard radio, and Slim spent the entire war as a radio operator. A Muppet-obsessed fan once took a radio manager hostage, claiming that he had a bomb, and demanded that a radio connection song be played continuously for the next 12 hours on the radio. The first instance, this cracked me up the first time I heard it. The first instance of telephone hold music was a mistake that was caused by a loose piece of wire touching a metal girder at a factory. It turned the building into a giant radio antenna which would play music from the next door radio station when people were put on hold. And a radio station in Guantanamo Bay has over 20,000 records, which is the largest collection of albums that exist in the world and nowhere else. Alright, I think I'm done. I'm getting hoarse by all my talking. I hope you have enjoyed my radio facts, and I will see you around on the tube soon. Bye for now. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.